Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters and participants. We're very honored to have you all with us, inshallah. We'll just give it a couple of minutes just for more people to be able to join. Usually we have our sessions the second Sunday of the month, but this month and month of November and December will have different timings due to Dr. Mubarak's schedule. But next month in October, we will meet the same time, the second Sunday of the month. When it comes to the timings on November and December, we will let you guys know when we will have it. So just register yourself so you're part of the email link, and so you're part of the news, part of the registration list. So we will share all the information. Also join our WhatsApp group so you'll be updated about all the details with regards to the halaqat, inshallah. So we'll start very shortly. We'll just give people like 2-3 minutes and then we'll start. An honor to have you all with us. All right. Let us just, 1 second. By the way, dear brothers and sisters, for all of you who haven't joined our WhatsApp group for all updates and discussions, I just added the link to the group in the WhatsApp chat, in the Zoom chat, so feel free to join, inshallah. There you get all the updates about the halaqah. All right, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalawat, wassalam ala rasulullah, wa alihi, wa sahbihi, wa min wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters. If you guys could just mute your microphones, we would really appreciate it. Jazakallah khairan. An honor to be with all of you, brothers and sisters. We've been having a break for a couple of months. We've been having summer and other initiatives. But alhamdulillah, shukrullah, our intention and niyyah is to have this halaqa now every month, inshallah. As I mentioned before, we will change the time for the halaqa during November and December, but during October, it will be the second Sunday of the month at 9:30 a.m. GMT, inshallah ta'ala. So without any further ado, so the whole halaqa is about reflecting upon the readings from a psychological point of view. This is what differentiates this halaqa with other halaqas that is organized with Imam Ghazali's works. There is a lot of halaqas where you can read the Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen. I joined a couple myself, which has been very beneficial. But what we try to do in this halaqa together with Dr. Mubarak and myself is to reflect and take the insights from the works of Imam Ghazali and the biography of Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, from a psychological point of view. This is the main objective of ISIP as the organizers, the International Students of Islamic Psychology. Feel free to reflect in the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat is always open, and we will also open up for you guys to come with your reflections during the session as well. Whenever we open up the microphone, dear brothers and sisters, just because of the time restriction, very brief reflections and questions, please, and also related to the topic, not anything else. If there are other questions that are beyond the topic, then we have the WhatsApp groups for the international resource sharing and discussion groups. Also, just a final thing with regards to the WhatsApp group for the Imam Ghazali Halaqa, please only discuss and share resources that is related to the halaqa. All other resources that is not related to the halaqa, we have our international groups for those where you're more than welcome to join and share those type of resources and discussions. So without any further ado, Dr. Mubarak, let's start today. Most welcome.
Thank you very much, Seyed Jamaluddin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن. إلهي أنت مقصودي ورضاك مطلوبي عاصني محبتك ومعرفتك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Let us first begin by bringing presence to our hearts and then making our intention with this intention that has been taught to me by my teachers. And I would like to share this intention with all of you. We will read it together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We read the Fatiha with the intention to give and to receive benefits, to teach and to learn, to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, zahir and batin, and with the intention to cooperate, work together, and assist one another in Islam and in adhering to the Sunnah of the Prophet. May Allah grant us complete determination and diligence in seeking beneficial knowledge, able to perform good deeds with sincerity and longevity in obedience to Him, a good ending during the time of death. الفاتحة بنية النفي وانتفاع وتعلم والتعليم والاقتداء بالنبي المختار في السر والإجهار وبنية تناصر وتعاون وتعاضد على الدين وإقامة الشريعة سيد المرسلين وأن الله إذا كمل النشر والحمة والجد والاجتهاد في طلب العلوم النافعة وعمل بها مع الإخلاص وطول العمر في طاعة الله وحسن الخاتمة عند الموت وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa shukrillah, shukri Rasulillah. His tawfiq in His name, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us once again the opportunity for us together, together, and for us to be able to read the Munqidh Ad-Dalala from a psychological perspective. Yeah, we had a couple of months of break, right? Plus last month that we were supposed to have a class, but unfortunately I was not well. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Right, we are able to still continue with this reading of Munqidh Ad-Dalala, inshallah. And alhamdulillah, today we are reading this Munqidh Ad-Dalala on the 1st of Rabi'ul Awwal. The 1st of Rabi'ul Awwal. It is a culture, it's a tradition within the Malay Nusantara. Right, for us who are not from the Malay Nusantara, probably also a culture in many other parts of the world that when it comes to the 1st to the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, every night between Maghrib and Isha, that many of the mosques in Singapore will be organizing the recitation of the Maulid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It could be the recitation of Maulid Ad-Daibai, Qasidatul Burda, Maulid Ad-Barzanji, and many other types of Maulid books that has been written throughout the century, throughout within the Islamic intellectual tradition. So therefore, right, it is a Rabiul Awwal where, right, it is where the the month of it's spring, right, where flowers are coming out, right? It gives us that happiness and gratitude of being given, all right, by Allah's qada and qadar to be the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in Singapore right now it's 5:45 p.m. Maghrib here is 7:05. So today I will end our discussion earlier so that I'm able to make my way to the mosque for the Maulid discussion. So we might not have time for Q&A at the end, but keep those questions that you have, and then we can post it on the WhatsApp group, and then we see how we are able to have further discussion on the areas that I'm trying to cover today, all right, and the other reflections that questions that I'm bringing up, issues that I'm bringing up while we are reading. While we have read chapter 1 and we are reading parts of chapter 2, we have missed, based on our schedule, a couple of pages that we are supposed to read. So what I will do is those couple of pages that we are supposed to read in the missing, the lessons that we were not able to continue, I will give a summary of those things that are covered within that part, right? Mostly it will be on the discussion on the philosophers. Mostly it will be on a discussion of the philosophers, which is from page 13 all the way to page number 25. So we missed to read these couple of pages on the philosophers, but I will share the main discussion of Imam Ghazali on this. But we need to, as how Brother Seyed Jamaluddin mentioned, that and to bring this back to the idea of psychology. What is the intention of chapter 2, looking from the perspective of psychology, so that we do not lose focus in our reading? Because when we read Munqidh and we read this discussion, there are so many approaches that we can take, right, in dealing with even the contents, right, of what the philosopher said, what the mutakallimun says, what the ta'limite says, what the Sufi says. So we can go into those contents as how Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali has analyzed them and critiqued them, right? Go to the critique of Imam al-Ghazali, whether we agree or we disagree. But we are not looking at it from that perspective. We are looking at it from that perspective of psychology, and as how we have framed it prior to this, all right, we have framed it in this part of the book, right? Frame it from the perspective of understanding youth psychology, because the matured Al-Ghazali, the spiritually matured Al-Ghazali, is talking about Al-Ghazali who was 19 years old. He is describing that Ghazali who was 19 years old, growing through, all right, that various journey of how, all right, he arrives to truth, and how he managed to overcome some of the major obstacle in his intellectual and spiritual development. So we need to have that context at the back of our mind. Then the next context that we need to have within our mind as we continue to read this is a reminder for myself and for all of us, right? For all of us, is Al-Ghazali's model of the human constitutions. This is Al-Ghazali's model. And we are talking about psychology. We are talking about psychology from this perspective, from this model of psychology, which the human being is a connection, is an integrated one whole being, or you want to say in another word, that it is the best manifestation of Tawheed is within the human being, because that all these constitutions of the human being, jism, qalb, aql, nafs, and ruh, they are all working together. They are there residing within, right, the jasad of the human being. Right? Now, then the idea from Imam Al-Ghazali is the nature of the soul of the human being. In our focus, the youth is universal. However, each soul of the human being, or with us, when we frame of a youth, has a unique history. The biophysical and social manifestation as it enters into relation with a unique body. Here I'm borrowing my teacher's terminology, Professor Osman Bakar, right, in his lecture number 2 with ISIP, that he mentioned about this biophysical and social dimension of the soul, where that is unique due to the different history. History here means the experience that a person, and here in the context of a youth, experience during his or her lifetime. Although the nature of the soul is universal, right, its particular manifestation from its biophysical and social dimension, all right, will be different. So this whole constitution of the human being is the Ghazalian model of how the human being is. And all these five, if we go deeper into it, these four, akal, qal, nafs, and ruh, could be reduced, or it is basically the different function of one dimension or one thing, one essence of the human being, which is the latifa, rabbaniyah, ruhaniyah, which is how Imam Ghazali uses that terminology within his book Ajaibul Qalb. Indeed, Ajaibul Qalb, and it is been translated as a subtle substance within the translation of the Ajaibul Qalb. Okay. So are you still seeing my slides?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So this we need to keep in our mind. Next is some questions that we would like to ask ourselves. And we asked these questions before. It's just a recap for all of us, so that we are back to the same on the same page. At what stages of development are these respective constituents happening during the growing years of a youth? All of these are within the human being from the time that they are born. All of this will go through its developmental stage. But at what developmental stage are all these when youths are growing? And how we define youth, depending on the country that we are in. In Singapore, we define youth from 15 to 35. That's a huge range from 15 to 35. Right? So how we want to define youth, right, depends on how which place that we are in. How do we support our youth intellectually and spiritually during the development of these respective constituents? Al-Ghazali. Now we have to understand, when we were reading chapter 1, Al-Ghazali at 19 years old, when he went through that intellectual doubts, the shock that he went through, and as he went through that, he was supported by a religious worldview around him. What surrounded him? The norm of the time, the norm of where he was in Nishapur when he was going through that doubt, was an environment that religious worldview is the dominant worldview. A worldview where the idea of the transcendent God, the idea of God is there. It is certain. It's not about doubt in terms of doubting the existence of God. Right? And he was equipped with grounded religious knowledge and teachers whom he was learning with. We have to know that context when we are reading Munqidh, how Imam Ghazali went through this whole journey as he described himself in chapter 1, which we have covered, and then going into chapter 2 when he is now describing to us the seekers of truth and how he is going to analyze these respective seekers of truth, right? Knowing that he is supported by this religious worldview around him, supported with grounded knowledge at the age of 19. He has covered majority of the religious sciences. Okay? And then he has teachers who are supporting him. And if you were to compare that with our youth, okay, our youth do not have this at all. Right? The surroundings that they are in are totally different. All right. So, essence of chapter number 1 from that psychological perspective is that we know that Al-Ghazali there, when he was talking about the doubt, the shock that he was going through, was about a search for certainty through aql, using proof as a process in recognizing a higher cognitive faculty, which is the heart. So at that time, the heart has a powerful cognitive faculty. At the age of 19, right, near the age of 20, he told us that he came back to equilibrium. He came back to the balance, not through systematic proofs and evidence, but to the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His generosity and His mercy. That light shines into his heart, and where he can then now begin to reaccept the intelligibles, the first principles that are there, right, in order to bring back equilibrium of the akal, right, the equilibrium of the akal. Now, the physical manifestation of this desire for certainty have physical manifestation on the behavior of youths, because there were physical manifestation on the life of Imam Al-Ghazali for 2 months. He mentioned inside the book, for 2 months he was searching for it, right, in 2 months. So that uncertainty, you have that physical manifestation, so that connectedness between the akal and the jasad. The akal was not stable. The akal was not in equilibrium. It took a toll on the physical. Now, the final submission of the existence of an akal, an existence of a higher cognitive faculty, spiritual heart, whose eyes is the akal, through the generosity and mercy of Allah, after the efforts put in by Al-Ghazali. Now, we need to bear in mind that Al-Ghazali was exposed already to spiritual practices. That's why that ability to accept the existence of the heart as a higher cognitive faculty, right? Therefore, his arrival at equilibrium at the age of 19 will not be similar to our youths who are now constantly exposed to godless worldviews. Something which we need to take into consideration when we are reading this from a psychological perspective. Chapter 2. When he goes on to chapter 2, his quest for certainty continues. Although he's already back at equilibrium, right? He's already back at his equilibrium. He was able to accept, all right? He was able to accept all the various, as he had mentioned, he was able to accept the mental necessities. I was then restored to health and equilibrium, and the mental necessities were once again accepted and relied upon with a sense of security and certitude. Okay, so that was accepted. Then, but he continued to explore the methodology of the seekers of truth, which was present during his time. So, at the beginning of chapter number 2, page 9, when Allah has cured me of this sickness by His gracious favor and the vastness of His generosity, the categories of the seeker became limited, in my view, to these 4 groups. Now, these seekers of truth, right, in a way, were different role models for him in their understanding of the embodiment of truth. So, as youth, we could see that truth or certainty was something that they are looking out for, which is universal in a way. Okay, and in order to look for certainty, you need to follow certain people, and that following of certain people will rest upon how the youths are equipped, right, with the various tools to help them, the exposures that they are given in order for them to lean towards a certain ideas, certain truth, certain methodology. Now, fortunately for Imam Al-Ghazali, all these categories that he was looking out for role models are God-centric. Right? And he was equipped with the necessary tool. But for our youth, the curiosity and the search for role models may not be met with the same preparation and environments that will enable them at the arrival of truth as how Imam Al-Ghazali arrived. So this chapter 2 tells us, although Imam Ghazali goes deep into that deep scrutiny of the methodology of the 4 groups of seekers of truth, what is it telling us from the perspective of psychology? Okay. Now, he said this, right, on page 9. I said within myself, the truth will not abandon these 4 categories, for they are the travelers on the paths of the quest for the truth. Even if the truth eludes them, attaining to the truth remains their only hope, since there is no hope of returning to convention after separating from it. By definition, the unquestioning follower of convention is not aware that he is a follower of convention. If he was aware of that, the bottle of his conventionality would break. It would be shattered glass beyond repair, a shattered glass that cannot be mended by piecing it together unless it is melted in the fire and shaped in a new and different form. From this, from my perspective, my hypothesis, my theorization is that there are three main foundations when we are looking at youth psychology after reading chapter 1 and chapter 2, based on how Al-Ghazali was describing himself. The matured Ghazali was describing the 19 years old Al-Ghazali. That inquiry and curiosity is something which is part and universal for our youths. They are in search of role models in order to bring them towards certainty. And they will hold on to role models that will bring certainty. Okay? Now, that is some reflections that I have, and also bringing us back towards the context that the context of reading Munqidh Ad-Dalala. Right? Let me just continue a bit more. Okay.
I just here, Dr. Mubarak, I had a
Yeah.
reflection. Or shall we just wait for the next slide and then I'll come with some reflections? Or
Okay. If you want reflection, because I'm worried that I might not be able to complete the reading.
oh, okay. Let's do the
Because,
read. We'll do it after.
because we need to, because I need to go by 6:30.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Inshallah, we will hold on. You write down your questions down there. You write it down on piece of papers. All right, and then share those reflections. All right, in the chat group, share those reflections in the Zoom chat group, in the WhatsApp group. All right, and we are more to happy to listen to it. All right, because as I said, I'm reading. The more number of times I'm going back and forth these pages, more things are coming to my mind, more questions are coming out instead of answers. Instead of answers. Okay. All right. So now going to the contents on page 13 to 25. Page 13 to 25. These pages which we did not read because of the classes that we have postponed. There are four main ideas down there, which I will go through quickly. It talks about the general groups of philosophers, Imam Al-Ghazali's position on the theistic philosophers, assessment of the enumeration of knowledge by the philosophers, and then the capacity of the enumeration towards erroneous understanding of those with feeble understanding. Now, this is Al-Ghazali, who is youth. Al-Ghazali, who was a youth, who was able to discern in terms of the methodology of the seekers of truth. He on his own, or probably maybe with his teachers, asking questions, well, when he has doubts and all that, okay, able to sift off, right, those that can be taken, those that cannot be taken. Now here he is sieving off from groups of seekers of truth who believe in the existence of God, who believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now our youth, what are they sieving off from? What tools do they have to be able to sieve off those godless worldviews that is out there that is bombarding them? How have we helped them to be able to navigate this so much, right, differences of truth claims by people of religion and people of no religion and many other groups? How do we help them to make sense? Okay. So you make assessment of their sciences, the mathematics, the logic, the natural science, the metaphysical science. Right, you can read this later when I give the slides to all of you. Okay, the politics, right, the siyasa, and then the ethics. Right, thorough study of all this. Someone who is equipped with the tools and knowledge and understanding only can be able to do this when they are trying to discern. Now, when we ask our youth, right, to discern all these worldviews that is out there, are they able, right, to do that? I very doubtful. because we have not prepared them, we have not given them, or we have not mentored them to be able to carry out this. Because what are they looking out for? They are looking out for certainty. I think when we were young, when we were youth also, we try and reflect upon ourselves. Sometimes we are very idealistic about things. When we believe about something, we believe it to be true. And we are so idealistic about it. And then when the elders try to advise us, we see that they don't understand us. Our idealism at the time of youth is very strong. And those ideals drive us. Those ideals drive us. So the ideals of Imam Al-Ghazali, when we see them there, is the methodology in order to be able to arrive at certainty. He was looking for that. He knows that you can reach certainty, you can reach the essence of all things through a methodology that that can quench the thirst. Right? That can quench the thirst. So the young Ghazali was able to discern truth from falsehood by himself through systematic study of the methodologies of the various seekers of truth. He was equipped to perform criticism of seekers of truth within the frame of Tawheed due to his intellectual doubt. Are we equipped to help our youth discern through the various worldviews and lifestyle now that are competing for their attention? How do we provide them with the tools to perform these enormous tasks? Do the youth want to perform these tasks as they are not even aware that they are just conforming to the norms of society without being critical? Or are they, the youth, self-deluded that they are being critical and we are helpless in helping our youth to realize that they are self-deluded? So I pause for a while, okay, for the Seyed Jamaluddin to have some reflection. Hold on.
No, I was just thinking about, by the way, Dr. Mubarak, thank you so much for your great valuable slides and presentation. We appreciate it. I was thinking about curiosity, and I think back in Imam Ghazali's time, they were rooted in a society that was rooted in Tawheed as all of the Furqan of the society was related to Tawheed. It was a Tawheedi society. It was the norm. Today, it's abnormal in our societies, most of societies in this modern world, to have Tawheed as the norm due to secularism and modern ideologies that are unfortunately governing many of our societies, right? So curiosity today, specifically when it comes to youths, but not only youths, even adults in all honesty, is good, but we need to be cautious. We need to be cautious because our psychology, when it comes to curiosity, could also take us astray if we don't have proper guidance. And that's why we believe as Muslims in a proper chain of transmission or a chain of knowledge, a sanad or a silsila, in order to know that what we are being curious about is rooted in our tradition. Now, back then, they needed to also think like that, but perhaps not as much, because there was a common denominator that forged the society, which was that the society was one based on a fitri ways of living and also based upon Tawheed. So you had unity in something, and then you could have multiplexity in the outreach or in the outcome or in the application. Hence that, Imam Ghazali's views might not be the same as other scholars of his time, because it was a multiplexity in viewpoints, but it was a unity in Tawheed, in the Quran and Sunnah. And even non-Muslims also adhere to that, by the way. They adhere to the Tawheed principles. And that was the norm. So when we are guiding our youths psychologically or pedagogically towards curiosity, and in this day and age when we have digitalization as something that is of a benefit if it's governed in the right way, but could also take people astray. I'm thinking about TikTok, for instance, and many other digital outlets. It's important that we as elders, we as older brothers and sisters or parents or teachers, we guide them properly. But we also can see a dichotomy when it comes to the notion of curiosity today, which affects us psychologically. On one end, you have full assimilation of everything, without being mindful of what you're assimilating, which is very problematic, you know. It's kind of like becoming a token of the notion of curiosity. I'm an open-minded person. I'm open to everything. This is like this so-called, in my view, superficial view of diversity and openness, because openness, yes, but you still need to be rooted in order to be open. You still have like an epistemological reality that you need to relate to, or an ontological reality that you're grounded to. So that is one problem, which is a reaction and perhaps influenced by liberal ideologies. On the other end, you have another extreme, which is we are against everything. We shouldn't be curious. We shouldn't be curious of other traditions' knowledge. We shouldn't be curious about everything. Everything is a deviation. Everything is, and that's also very extreme, because that's not the position of Imam Ghazali or many of our traditional scholars who were curious about other thoughts, tradition, not to just fully assimilate like the extreme on the one spectra of the dichotomy, which is just internalize everything, just assimilate everything, which is this new liberal notion of so-called openness. But on the other end, if you're just disconnecting from everything, that is a reactionism, which is not healthy, and it's not part of our tradition, because the Prophet ﷺ said that you should as a seeker, as a believer, see wisdom as the lost property of the believer. You know, wherever you found it, you can use it. But what does that mean? You need to do it mindfully. So we have two extremes in this notion of curiosity in our modern era. One is to totally disconnect, and one is to just connect without being mindful of the integration process. And the middle ground is what Imam Ghazali is referring to, and what we can bring into the psychological overview of speaking about youth psychology and guiding youth towards healthy ways of engaging with curiosity, which is to integrate, but using Quran and Sunnah as a furqan, as the benchmark, and to always be rooted in the way that you're curious. That is the balance. That is where we can mindfully engage. And that's what we need to help our youths to be able to be open for this perspective, but also to be mindful of the two extremes of the spectra of this dichotomy that we see in this modern era. So these are just some of my reflections with regards to the notion of curiosity, Dr. Mubarak.
Thank you very much, Professor Jamaluddin. Yeah, it's definite. The two extremes are there. Okay, but curiosity, I would say, will be the trademark of youth.
Yeah, exactly.
How we as how we are supposed to guide. And Imam Ghazali was able to be guided. Number one, environment was there. Number two, he has the tools, he has the teachers. But our youths, how are we going to do that? Right? And as how his brother Jamaluddin has mentioned, is that the two extremes, right, could also be to the youths are at different developmental stages of their various constitutions, and then they were given the disappropriate type of exposure or content that might have brought them to the extremes. So therefore, each person is unique. Each youth is unique in their respective psychological development. If I'm using the term psychology in that whole complete sense of the word, as how Prof. Osman has defined it, right, in his lecture, and how he has discussed it very thoroughly, all right, within all the 5 lectures that he had with ISIP. So as I'm using the term from that perspective, if we are able, all right, to see those respective stages of development, probably we are able to, as policymakers, as parents, as teachers, as guidance, as counselors, and all that, be able to give the appropriate intellectual and spiritual content and guidance to them. Being able to give that individualized help, or the individualized mentorship that our youth require. It is a humongous task. It is a humongous task for us to be able to look into this, and for us to pave the way for the next generation, all right, to carry out this respective research further, all right, to deep go into further, because things are not getting any better in our world. Things are not getting any better in our world. All right, I would love to hear from more people. All right, but I think due to time, all right, I want to just we want to read our text on page 25. Right? Before that, if you are interested in looking at the classification of knowledge within the three schools, all right, that is been mentioned here by Imam Al-Ghazali. Imam Ghazali mentioned four schools, right, which is the um philosophers, the Mutakallimun, the Ta'limites, and also the Sufi. Right here in Professor Osman Bakar's work on classification of knowledge in Islam, it talks about three main schools, which are the philosophers, the Mutakallims, and the Ishraqis, where he studies how the classification of knowledge is being carried out, all right, by these four schools. And within the Mutakallimun, Professor Osman Bakar talks about Imam Al-Ghazali's classification of knowledge. So you can get this book, all right, for you to go deeper into that idea of classification of knowledge, right, to see how the philosophers does it. Okay. So for now, let us turn to page 35 of our text.
Please.
Page 25 of our text, so that we can read.
You see,
We will read all the way through from page 25 all the way to page 32, and inshallah the discussion we can have through our WhatsApp group or through our Zoom link, inshallah. Okay? But bear in mind, when we are reading this looking at Imam Al-Ghazali, okay, who is curious in terms of the curiosity, the inquiry of Imam Muhammad Al-Ghazali into looking at the methodology of arriving at truth. And he was able to do all this discernment in order for him to know what is the right one, what is not, what is right, what is not in each one of them. So we take it to ourselves, we look at it from the angle, how do we help our youth to be able to do this form, all right, of furqan, this form of discernment, all right, with so much that is going on down here. With so much that is going on down here. So I would like to invite who would like to read.
Your brothers and sisters, raise your hands if you would like to read. And then we will open up the microphone for you guys. All right, Sister Rawia, please go ahead and open up your microphone. You can read.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا. عودا حميدا دكتور مبارك، ربنا يحفظك يا رب، يحفظكم جميعا.
آمين. جزاك الله خير.
حضرتك from which line? The third category?
The third category, yes, correct. The third category.
حاضر.
Okay. Thank you.
They are the latest of the philosophers, like Socrates, who was the teacher of Plato, while Plato was the teacher of Aristotle.
So not this one, not this page. Sorry, page 25.
Page 25.
My screen, page 25. The aberrant doctrine of the exoterists who believe in the teaching of the infallible Imam.
I have it here, 25 as well.
The one on my screen?
Oh, I'm not reading from your screen. I'm reading from the book.
Oh, you're reading from the book. So the book is on page 25. 25. Chapter 2, page 25. Are you reading from the same book, right?
Yes. Hopefully.
Yeah. So
I will read from your slide, Doctor. Inshallah, I will read.
Okay, yeah.
Number 3, the aberrant doctrine of the exoterists. Yes, who believe in the reading of the infallible Imam. Infallible Imam. Yeah. Yes. Then so when I had finished...
this is referring to... So let me just explain. The esoterists down here are the Ta'lims, the Ta'limites, the Ismailis. Right? The infallible Imam is basically their doctrine about the Imam of Maksum. Right? The Maksum Imam. Okay? Yeah, okay, continue.
I know. Then when I had finished acquiring knowledge and understanding of the science of philosophy and ascertaining what is spurious therein, sorry, because I keep doing this, I knew that it was also insufficient for the perfect achievement of the goal. I knew that the mind is not independently capable of encompassing all the objects of the quest, nor of removing the veil from all the enigmas. The heresy of the I cannot pronounce this word correctly. The
esotericists.
Yes, had flourished, and they had become famous for their claim to acquire knowledge of the meaning of things from the infallible Imam, the master of the truth. It occurred to me that I should study the treatise in order to become familiar with the contents of the books. Then I happened to receive a, a, per, a perpetually,
Preemptory. Yeah.
yes, as I can see, command from the Caliph demanding the composition of a book. This is where he comes back, inshallah, from that would disclose the reality of the doctrine. So I could not possibly not to obey, refuse to obey. That became an incentive from without, an addition to the basic motivation from within. So I set about finding their books and collecting their treatises. I came across some of their innovative statements which originated from the ideas of their contemporaries, not in accordance with the method of the predecessors. So I collected those statements. I arranged them in precise and minute and in precise and orderly sequence, and produced the response to them in minute detail, to the point where some advocates of the truth found fault with my elaborate, subhanAllah, elaborate presentation of their argument, saying this work is to be their
Advantage.
advantage. Yes, for they would have been incapable of supporting their doctrine with specious arguments like these. Specious arguments like these, but for precise and orderly presentation of them. Can I stop at this point, sir?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Right.
Jazakumullah khair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, then I will continue to save time. This criticism has some validity from the standpoint of the truth. For Ahmad ibn Hanbal found fault with Al-Haris al-Muhasibi, may Allah bestow His mercy on them both, for the work he composed on the refutation of the Mu'tazila. When Al-Haris says, the refutation of heresy is an obligatory duty, Ahmad replied, yes, but you related their specious argument first of all, then you responded to it. How can you be sure, if someone pursues the specious argument, that it will not become fixed in his understanding and he will not pay attention to the response, or that he will not look at the response and will not comprehend its real meaning? What Ahmad said is true, but only with reference to a specious argument that has not been propagated and become widely known. If it has been propagated, however, the response to it is necessary, and the response can only be given after the presentation. Of course, it must not be presented artificially, and I was not guilty of that. I had actually heard that specious argument from one of my regular companions after he had associated with the esotericists and embraced their doctrine. He told me that they laughed at the works of those authors who sought to refute them, ridiculing their failure to understand their argument. He stated that argument and related it on their behalf. I could not him think me capable of negligent disregard for the basis of their argument. So that is why I set it forth. I could not let him think that I had not understood it, even though I had heard it. So that is why I presented it exactly. The point is that I presented their specious argument exactly to the fullest extent possible. Then I demonstrated its unsoundness with the utmost proof. Now this is the book on Fadaih al-Mustazhiri, a book that was commissioned to Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali by the Caliph at that point of time, right, to write a book to refute the teachings of the Bathinites, the teaching of the Bathinites. As for the summary conclusion, it is said that these people have nothing to value to offer, and there is no substance to their teaching. But for the support of the ignorant champion of the truth, that heresy would not have achieved this degree of success in spite of its weakness. As it happened, however, the intensity of fanatical zeal moved the defenders of the truth to engage in prolonged dispute with them concerning their premises of their doctrine and to quarrel with them over every statement they uttered. They disputed with them over their assertion of the need for teaching and the teacher, and their assertion not every teacher is suitable. There is no substitute for the infallible imam, the infallible teacher. Their argument succeeded in propagating the need for teaching and the teacher, and the case of their opponents was feeble by comparison. Many were misled by that, for they took it to be a sign of the strength of their doctrine and the weakness of the doctrine of the opponents. They failed to understand that it was due to the weakness of the upholder of the truth and his ignorance of his proper cause. The correct approach is to acknowledge the need for the teacher and that there is no substitute for the infallible teacher but our infallible teacher, if Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they said he is dead, we should say, and your teacher is absent. When they said our teacher taught the missionaries and dispersed them in the countries and he awaits their return, if they disagree or experience difficulty, we should reply, our teacher taught the missionaries and dispersed them in the countries and he perfected the teaching. Since Allah exalted is he has told us, today I have perfected your religion for you and I have completed my blessing upon you. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 3. After the perfection of the teaching, no harm is caused by the death of the teacher, just as no harm is caused by his absence. We have yet to consider their question. How do you reach a decision about something when you have not heard it mentioned? Do you base your decision on the authoritative ruling, although you have not heard it, or on independent judgment and opinion, which is subject to disagreement? Our response to this would be, we do what Mu'adh did when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam dispatched him to Yemen. He used to decide on the basis of the authoritative ruling when that ruling existed and on the basis of independent judgment when it did not exist. This is just how their missionaries act when they find themselves in the distant lands, far away from the Imam, since it is impossible for them to decide on the basis of the authoritative rulings. The specific rulings do not cover the unspecified events, and it's impossible for them to return to the town of the Imam whenever something unforeseen occurs. If an envoy is sent to request a verdict, he is likely to have died before covering the distance there and back. So the consultation will be futile. If it is hard for someone to determine the Qibla, he has no alternative to rely on his personal judgment. If he traveled to the town of the Imam in order to determine the Qibla, he would miss the time of prayers. It is therefore permissible to pray in a direction other than the Qibla on the basis of supposition. It is said in the statement attributed to the Prophet, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone makes a mistake when exercising independent judgment, he is entitled to a single reward. And if someone makes a correct decision, he is entitled to 2 rewards. The same principle applies to all cases of independent judgment. In the matter of disbursing the alms due to the pauper, for instance, the donor may suppose that the recipient is poor on the strength of his personal judgment, although he is secretly rich by keeping his wealth concealed. That donor should not be censured even if he makes a mistake. If someone thinks otherwise, we shall say he is commanded to follow his own supposition, just like the worshipper who exercises independent judgment concerning the direction of the prayer, even if someone else disagrees with him. Suppose someone posed the question, what about the conventional conformist? Should he follow Abu Hanifa or Shafi'i? May Allah bestow His mercy upon them both, or some other juristic authority. My response would be, what if the conventional conformist is in doubt? If the independent thinkers differs, how should he act? To this, my questioner will surely reply, he is capable of making his own judgment based on his knowledge of the best and clearest indications of the Qibla. So he should follow that personal judgment. He should act likewise in relation to the schools of thought. The prophets and the imams directed people towards independent judgment of necessity, in spite of knowing that they would sometimes make mistake. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually said, I base my judgment on what is outwardly apparent, while Allah takes charge of the inner secrets. In other words, I base my judgment on the most probable supposition resulting from the testimony of the witnesses, and I am sometimes mistaken. The Prophet had no means of security for making mistake in such cases of independent judgment, so how can we aspire to that security? In this context, the exotericists pose 2 questions, one of which is expressed as follows. Even if conjecture is permissible in matters of independent judgment, it is not permissible where the principles of religious belief are concerned, since there is no excuse for being mistaken about them. So what is the correct approach? My answer to this must be, the principles of religious belief are contained in the book and the sunnah. As for the detailed exposition that is added thereto, and which is subject to debate, the truth in it is ascertained by weighing with the right balance, meaning the criteria mentioned by Allah in His book. Those criteria are 5 in numbers, as we explained in the book entitled Al-Qistas Al-Mustaqim. If someone says, your adversary disagree with you about that balance, I shall reply, it is inconceivable that anyone might understand that balance and then disagree with me about it. The exotericists believe in teaching received from an infallible source, so they do not disagree with me about it because I derived it from Quran and learn it therefore. The dialecticians do not disagree with me about it because it is consistent with the irrefutable logic they stipulated. The scholastic theologian does not disagree with me about it because it is consistent with his treatment of the proofs of theories and it enables him to ascertain what is true in theological debates. Suppose someone says, if you have such a balance at your disposal, why do you not remove the disagreement among people? To this I shall reply, if only they would pay attention to me, I would surely remove the disagreement among them. I have explained the way to dispose of disagreement in the book entitled Al-Qistas Al-Mustaqim. So you ought to study it in order to recognize that it is true and that it puts an end to disagreement altogether. If only they would pay attention, but none of them pay attention to it. As a matter of fact, a certain group did pay attention to me once and I disposed of the disagreement among them. Your Imam seeks to remove the disagreement among them despite their lack of attention. So why has it not yet been removed? Why did Sayyidina Ali, may Allah be well pleased with him, fail to remove it? He being the chief stain of the Imams. Your Imam claimed that he is able to compel them all to pay attention. So why has he failed to do so before now? For what day is the deadline set? Has anything arisen among the people because of his claim, apart from an increase in disagreement and conflict? What used to be feared from this agreement was a kind of harm that did not result in the shedding of blood and the devastation of towns, the orphaning of children, highway robbery, and the seizure of properties. From the blessings of your eliminating this agreement, what would happen in the world would be something the like of which there has never been. Right. I have to stop here. Right, it's past 6:30. So I encourage all of you to continue reading. Okay, just a bit more. Right, on this, okay, and then we can reflect upon, we see down here the conversation that Imam Muhammad al-Ghazali is having. Although, all right, some of the conversation is my opponent might reply, they might reply. So it's a pseudo kind of dialogue. But that shows the skillfulness that he has in going into the worldview of the opponent that he's talking about and break down that whole argument using their very argument. Now we bring this back to the various worldviews, the godless worldviews that are available down there that is confronting our youths. Our youths are not able to do that. They do not have that tool. Are we able to help our youth to see those loopholes or not? We can't do it if we don't even learn and we don't have the tools. So therefore, there's a lot of things that we need to do in order for us to be able to help our youths within our respective countries, right? So that inshallah, hopefully, our youth are protected, our youths are given the tools to help them, right, to be intellectually and spiritually resilient, inshallah.
Dr. Mubarak, you know what I was thinking? You can go and
Yeah.
I can be here with this with the participants and we can reflect together with your
All right,
permission. Yeah.
please go ahead, no problem.
I thought
You can
because
continue
there
to finish.
might be some questions, so then we can try to reflect. And if it's question that we can't answer, then we will get back to you with the questions, inshallah.
No problem. All right, so I will leave you to Brother Seyed Jamaluddin. If you want to read the remaining parts, go ahead and read the remaining parts if you want.
No, we will read it with you. I think it's important that you're with us when we read. We will just reflect upon the things that maybe the students have some questions or the participants. So we'll just reflect upon them and see if we can collectively answer them. If not, we will take it next time, inshallah.
All right, sure. Ken. All right, my apologies. All right, inshallah, I will see you next month in October, the second Sunday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Honored to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan. All right, brothers and sisters, feel free to raise your hands and let's reflect together. You guys can also write in the chat and we'll take like 15, 20 minutes more to be with each other. So Sister Mahlaqa, you're raising your hand. Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, brother. I was just thinking if you can give a little bit brief summary of what she read from page 25 and onwards. Actually, I wanted to read. I raised my hand at that point, but I think nobody saw it. So, but I had to leave for some reason and I missed. So can you just quickly, if it's possible, just a brief, little bit briefing what you...
It won't be possible right now because when it comes to the whole tradition of reading a book with a teacher, we need to have a teacher here, you know. So just to you know, embrace our tradition of reading a book with somebody who is a teacher, let's read with him. But you can you have the book in the Google, in the WhatsApp group, in the link, and you can read the chapters later yourself, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. It's an honor to have you with us. Yes, could you just raise your hands and I will organize this accordingly. So raise your digital hands and mute your microphones as well. And then I will ask you to unmute when it's your time. All right. All right, Dr. Seema, go ahead. Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, today we had a conversation in ISIP Pakistan. And you see, they were also
Dr.
talking
Seema, just 1 second. All the discussions should be related to the topic. So if it's related to the topic of the reading today, then please, or else we will have other forums for that.
Yeah, no, please, talking about the feeling of being overwhelmed. Imam Ghazali went through. We all go through these feelings often, and we often couldn't even recognize it. This is the feeling that that is sometimes taken as a being psychologically disbalanced, and those persons are not psychologically disbalanced. They are just unable to understand what is going around them due to the culture, not the tradition of Deen, but the tradition of their own home, their own surrounding. That's what I was thinking while the things were being read by Ustad and the readers. But due to the language barrier, I couldn't express myself so clearly. But yes, overwhelming is something that I heard from the mouth of a suicidal person, and I couldn't understand what is the meaning of feeling overwhelmed. Because whenever I would get overwhelmed, I would just try to intellectualize my understanding and find a truth between the situation and go through it. But sometimes people are unable to go through those states. It was only Imam Ghazali who was able to not only comprehend all those feelings, but also write it down, researched about it, and in his later years was able to write more about it with his intellectual. Otherwise, we are not that we don't even have that intellect, because we don't have that peace of mind, that understanding of our surrounding with so many information.
I get it. I'm sorry, Dr. Seema, that I interrupt you out of just the time concerns, but just to, if you could just summarize briefly. So you wanted to say something else as well. So please, if you can just summarize that, and then we can reflect upon what you're saying.
Yes, I can summarize that being overwhelmed is some feeling that we, because this is international student of psychology platform, this understanding of feeling overwhelming is to be understood by each and every one of us, and has to be, and we can, I see I am understanding it through this book of Ghazali.
Beautiful.
What is the feeling of amal?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Seema, for sharing your understanding. We really appreciate it. And that's exactly how we should read this type of books. You know, like when we read our traditional scholars' works, we should try to understand it by also connect it to our own lived experience. That's very important, to connect it to our own lived experience. So you're trying to connect the readings that we're doing collectively from your own lived experience. And that's the best way of learning something, by the way, because we all learn differently, brothers and sisters, right? We all learn differently because we all have different contexts that we grew up in. We all have different circumstances. We all are raised in different environments. So when we try to internalize knowledge, we do it from our own lived experience. That's how you take theory into application, is by rooted it in your own experience of life. And that's what you're doing, Dr. Seema, in such an excellent way. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you as a role model of how we can internalize knowledge. I really appreciate all of your thoughts. And please forgive me for interrupting you. My sincere apologies, just out of time restrictions so that more people can also come with reflection. But I do agree. And the whole notion of overwhelmness is very important. Why are we overwhelmed? Because sometimes when we have too much, you know, information surrounding us, it could be quite overwhelming. You know, how are we supposed to filter it? How are we supposed to navigate through it? And yes, not all people have the capabilities of what Imam Ghazali has, but Imam Ghazali's time was different than our time. They were not exposed to social media the way we are. They were not exposed to digitalization the way we are. They were not exposed to so many different ideologies the way we are. So we need to look at our reality, and we all need to have our own benchmarks besides the Quran and the Sunnah as our common denominating, as a common benchmark. But we need to also look at our own disposition, because we're all unique in our character as well. So some people get overwhelmed quite easily. Then you should be a little bit more restricted in, you know, engaging in different, you know, knowledge inquiry processes. You know, to become a master doesn't mean that you need to master 1,000 different things. It could also be to just master one thing. You know, so for instance, the traditional guilds where people learn a trade, they learn a profession. They didn't always. They didn't need to always master different subjects. They mastered the art of being a blacksmith, and that's it. And they became the best blacksmiths in the world, or the best carpenters in the world. So it's about also focusing sometimes. And then not all people can be polymaths. I mean, Imam Ghazali was a polymath, right? Many of our traditional scholars were polymath because they were blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this gift of being able to work interdisciplinary. Not all people have that capability, and that's perfectly fine. Allah gives us different gifts. So by being overwhelmed, if somebody is that, we need to filter sometimes, you know, to not be able to get, you know, drowned by different knowledge, inquiry processes. You know, this is very important. And also, we are not all Imam Ghazali. He is, you know, Hujjat al-Islam. We're not all of us are not that, right? So we take inspiration from his work, but we all deal with our traumas in different ways. But from trauma comes growth. This is something that is similar for all of us. From trauma comes growth. It comes spiritual growth. In his case, the Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen came from his trauma. The Ihya came. And from us, maybe other things will come from our trauma. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan, dear Sister Sema, for sharing your excellent reflections. Yes, Sister Rawiya, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. Inshallah, if you want to apply or translate, helping the youth, especially now in the disasters around us in Libya and Morocco, and how can we help them? If I'm like Dr. Seema said, we're overwhelmed, and we have yaqeen, alhamdulillah, but our resources are finite, and maybe we, as a psychotherapist, we're not that, I don't know, because when you talk religion, it's not like psychology. Psychology is not like religion. Some people won't hear you, won't listen to us. My kids, for instance, they tell me, don't talk about religion. This is not psychology, and I cannot answer them back.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I'm not equipped. How can we equip ourselves to salvage these people, as much as we can?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good reflection. And just to root it back to the readings. Yeah, it's difficult. because everybody has their own, you know, trajectory in life. And
This
I
is
really
a
believe that
generational trauma. Yes,
I don't think that
it's
there is
trauma.
one, I don't think there's one template. I think that we all,
Yes.
I always think, and reading Imam Ghazali's Munqidh and his biography, and we're reading it step by step. We're reading his experience, right? And why we're reading his biography before we start with the Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen is because from his biography, we can understand how Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen came to place. The Ihya, which is the revival, came from his life experience of his upbringing, his trials and tribulations in life, you know, his experiences led to the Ihya, which is one of the greatest works in Islamic thought of all time. So we're trying to understand Imam Ghazali from his biography and what led to the Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen, which is the readings that we were going to do after we're done with his biography. So what can we take from psychological insights from that? How can we learn from his experience? When he became overwhelmed, if we're going to use that word overwhelmed, you know, he took a break. He left his work. He traveled all over the world to seek the truth. He went back to his hometown to go back to the roots of why he became a scholar in the first place. And through that, he got healing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that led to inspiration, which led to integration, which led him to integrate his past experience into his presence. And the result became Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen. Subhanallah. So that's how we can look at it. If some of us are overwhelmed right now, take a pause. You know, take 2 steps back, like what Imam Ghazali did. Take 2 steps back and try to reflect, why am I overwhelmed right now? Accept the state of overwhelmness. Because there is a lot, okay, and then maybe, as you said, Sister Rabi, I'm overwhelmed because my children are questioning some aspect of, let's say, psychology, let's say. Or I'm overwhelmed because there's a lot of disasters going on all over the world. In Morocco and Libya, I feel it's too much. All right, you take a step back. You just be with that overwhelmness. Accept the overwhelmness, you know. Instead of forcing yourself to find a solution directly, just take a couple of steps back, like what Imam Ghazali did. And just reflect upon, why am I overwhelmed? Maybe even put yourself in a state of khalwa or uzla, seclusion. And then from there, with time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will heal the overwhelmness, and it comes growth and hikmah, wisdom of why am I overwhelmed? And maybe from that, you will be able to create something unique. You will create your own Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen. You will create that as an answer of the state of overwhelmness. But when we try to change overwhelmness by engaging even more and activate ourselves even more, that could be quite counterproductive. And we get even more overwhelmed and burdened, because sometimes it's kind of like looking at yourself from the aspect of whether I have a metacognition, which means to think about my thought or not. When we are overwhelmed, we go to something called tunnel vision. We become quite narrow-minded. We don't see the panorama view. We don't see the bird's eye view of the whole situation, of the whole context. We just see parts of the context because we're overwhelmed. We can't grasp everything. We get the tunnel vision. It's a fight or flight or fight response. But if we take a step back and just allow ourselves to accept that I'm currently overwhelmed, then after a while, the tunnel vision will be changed and switched into a panorama vision, into a bird's eye view. And that's where we can do tafakkur and tadabbur and reflect and ponder about things. And then you will see new wisdoms and hikmah coming from the current situation that you are in, which will lead to your Ihya Ulum-ad-Deen, inshallah. I hope that was an answer to your question, inshallah.
Dr. Said, if you are not overwhelmed,
Jazakallah khairan.
if this is istirahat muharib, yani you are deliberately taking this istirahat, you're not overwhelmed. You're still focused, you're still having the arrow and you're an archer. And you're stepping back 2 steps to focus, and inshallah, Allah yusaddid ramyak. This is different. I feel that there are so many people who are role models among us. Youth do have role models, but they are on the ground. They're only in their reality. They know them. يعني for me you are a role model. You are a role model. بسم الله ما شاء الله. This is who you are. Yeah, يعني and you're young in your age, بس كبير المقام ما شاء الله. الله أكبر تبارك الله.
Exactly.
We do not have to say يعني words that no there are so many. بسم الله ما شاء الله. الأمة is full and يعني ripe to stand up. They are already standing up. They are in استراحة محارب. This is what I really believe in.
Jazakallah khairan.
When my kids tell me that, tell me that I'm not equipped in psychology, I'm not equipped to say things, but I know one day, soon, inshallah, things will differ.
You're already a source of knowledge. You're all source of knowledge. Jazakallah khairan. Just thank you for your excellent reflections and remarks. Sister Mahlaqa, go ahead. A brief reflection.
Yeah, brother. I had a question. Just the sister before me, she asked the same question. So actually, it was regarding the youth, that they don't have the tools that at that time, like Imam Ghazali's time, the youth had, and there is so much godlessness around them, and even as parents and mentors, we don't have those tools. So that was my question. Was same, like how we can be provide that kind of tools to our youth, as we can see them drifting away from religion and struggling and trying to find the groundedness, or the that Imam, the teacher was talking about, that he was trying to find the, what you call that, determination, or that point to focus and to ground themselves, and they are unable to do that because of the godlessness. And it's so overwhelming, as the other sister said, talked about overwhelm, and it is overwhelming for us because we cannot help them. But right now, when you were giving the explanation and reflection, and when you were explaining it to me, suddenly it occurred to me, and I want to share it with you as my reflection, that I think that our joining to ISIP, and you brother, you and others creating this platform is I think this is the answer to our duas and the prayers we have been making for so long to guide our youth. Because after joining this forum, we are getting equipped with the tools. And I think reading about Imam Ghazali can be a tool for us. It's giving us the tools to try to understand how to help others. And hopefully it's taking time, but we will have to be patient. And as the other sister said, that when children, they talk about, it's happening everywhere. We are all facing that. The children are saying, don't talk about religion. There is no religion or no God or those kind of stuff. So it's very scary and very overwhelming for us. But I think we have to be very patient. We should not force anything on them. We should try to understand them. Like, just try to listen to the youth for now and keep praying. And we do our work by joining these forums and trying to understand the deen and equip ourselves. Keep praying for them. Be there for them. Show them by being role models. We have to become the role models. I feel that this is the only way, the only answer. And when we will become the role models and we don't force anything to them, don't actually talk to them about religion, be there for them, help them in every other way, talk to them about other things, and most probably, inshallah, one day Allah will guide them, and somehow Allah will connect them to this kind of platform or people.
Sister Mahlaba, thank you so much for your reflections, and I appreciate it. I want to thank Sister Rabia as well. Both of you are amazing role models. Sister Rabia, by the way, you're an excellent role model, and Sister Mahlaba, you're excellent role model. Dr. Seema, you're excellent role models. I agree with you. Only one of the things you said, maybe I can add something to it. We should speak with religion with our children. I do believe that. But here's the thing, we should do it pedagogically. And what does pedagogue mean? So pedagogue comes from the root word of Latin. In Latin, pedagogue means to go beside. To go beside. It's kind of like being an irshad. So pedagogue, translated to Arabic, the etymological meaning, etymology for you who do not know what this means the science of the roots of words, the science of meanings of words, etymology, all right? So the etymological meaning of the word pedagogue is somebody who goes besides in the Latin vocabulary, okay? So if we take that word into our Islamic tradition, we can connect that to irshad, a guide, somebody who shows the light, guides the path. So we should be, when it comes to religious studies or upbringing or tarbiyah with our youths and children, we should be as pedagogues or irshad, guides, somebody who goes beside. Help them to navigate, but not by just speaking about this is haram and this is halal. It's important to speak about halal and haram, for sure. It's important to speak about fiqh, definitely. But we should also speak about mahabbat, love, tazkiyat the-nafs, rectifying yourself. And also to show the characteristics of the akhlaq tradition, which also Imam Ghazali speaks about, the seekers of the truth, the akhlaq tradition of Islam. You see what I'm saying? How to be a good person, how to embody the prophetic ways, how to support one another. That Islam, we have sometimes in our way of educating our youths in tarbiyah, compartmentalize the whole notion of upbringing, the whole notion of religious studies into some domain there and some domain there, instead of integrating all domains into one. In order to understand Sharia, you need to also understand akhlaq. In order to understand akhlaq, you need to also understand adab. In order to understand adab, you need to understand usul al-Quran. In order to understand usul al-Quran, you need to understand hadith. In order to understand hadith, you need to understand Sharia. It's all connected, but the way that we are bringing up our children, we are doing it in a very compartmentalized and disintegrated way. And now I'm generalizing. I'm not saying that everybody does like this. And this is nasiya to myself first and foremost, because modernity has been affected by secularism, and secularism is disintegration. If you look at psychology, psychology used to be the science of the soul, ilm al-nafs. But today, psychology in West is the science of cognitions and behavior inclination. They have disconnected from the soul. So we need to bring back the soul into the religious upbringing and tarbiyah and education of our children. So you connect the soul to fiqh. You connect the soul to Sharia. You connect the soul to akhlaq. You connect the soul to adab. You connect the soul to all disciplines. So when you read the Quran with the children, when you teach them tajweed, that you're teaching them connecting also to embodying the Quran. Not only reading it, it's important, but also embodying it. We need to work with internalization of knowledge, of divine sacred knowledge. So you don't just read, you learn by practicing it. Because the mother of the believer, Aisha radiallahu anha, when she was speaking about the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did she say? That the Prophet is like the walking Quran. What does that mean? That he was the embodiment of the Quran. And that's how we can bring back this embodiment into our youths, by not disintegrating the studies and tarbiyah, integrating holistically, rooted in the Quran and Sunnah, integrating holistically, to actually go out with the youths to the nature and show them the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the trees. Because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us that you can understand the ayat, the signs of the creation from the creator. You can understand the wisdom of the creator by looking in your surrounding, the signs, you see? So you connecting yourself with nature, with the Quran, connecting yourself with your environment and taking care of your environment with the sacred knowledge that is derived from the Quran and the Sunnah. So, Allahu Alam. This is just my reflections a bit from what you said, Sister Rabia and
I
Sister
totally agree.
Jazakallah.
Totally agree
Jazakallah
with
khair.
you, brother. Yeah,
Jazakallah
that's
khair.
the main. I also meant the same thing. Actually, I didn't mean that by forcing them. I meant sometimes we have to use wisdom. Like we don't have to direct. We can talk about all these things without telling them, like without saying that this is Islam or this is, we can still talk about all of this stuff. That, and whatever you said, yeah, I agree with that, brother. Thank you.
I understand, sister, what you mean. I just wanted to add it to it, but your reflections were excellent. Jazakallah. Yeah, sorry, Sister Rabia. Thank you for correcting me. It's from Greek, not from Latin, as I said. Pedagogue's etymological root is from the Greek. Exactly. All right, dear sisters and brothers, we need to end the meeting now. Zuraimi is writing, Brother Zuraimi from Singapore. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Zuraimi. An honor to have you with us. The Ghazali model encompasses the holistic methodologies of pedagogy and androgygy and heterogygy. Androgygy means man knowledge, right? And heterogygy means feminine knowledge, if I'm not mistaken. Could you explain the word heterogegy in the chat, please? No, nothing more apt than this ISIP platform. Alhamdulillah, shukrullah. You're totally right. Thank you for your clear views. Thank you, Sister Noha. Ecosystem. Yes, Dr. Sima, you're right. We need to establish an ecosystem. Irshad is guide, yeah. Guidance, yes. Pedagogy is to be a guide, to go, beside someone. It's not to just dictate like this, is to go and allow that person to grow. So we as Islamic psychologists, we who are therapists, all of us are counselors, when we work with a client, we don't tell them what to do. We're going with them as a guide, as a companion in their healing trajectory so that they can resolve their issues. And in that way, they will feel empowered because they are the ones that will get the healing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not the healers. This is also very important. We as Muslim therapists are not the healers. We're just the vessels. Allah is the healer. Allah is Ash-Shafi. And the same with teaching. In the end of the day, the teacher is Allah. He is using us as a tool to disseminate the knowledge that is the right, because everything is the right from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that makes you humble when you start to become a teacher or a parent that is giving your children tarbiyah, that the tarbiyah comes from Allah. We're just guides. We're just guides. And that makes you humble. And when you're humble in the way that you're engaging in pedagogy, then you can understand the shortcoming of the student is a reflection of the shortcoming in yourself. The shortcoming of the client is a reflection of the shortcoming within yourself, because we're all filled with flaws. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our studies as a way of pleasing Him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your questions, all of your reflections as a way for you to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please forgive me for any shortcomings from my side when it comes to my reflections or interventions. My sincere apologies. Thank you all for joining today, dear excellent sisters and brothers. Continue the conversations and dialogue in the WhatsApp group of the Imam Ghazali Halaqa, so you guys can learn from each other's experience. You're all sources of knowledge, dear excellent brothers and sisters. All of you who raise your hands, all of you who ask questions, all of you who shared your reflections in the Zoom chat, you're all sources of knowledge. You're all filled with knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept that from all of you. So continue spreading the wisdom that you guys have gained from your trajectory in life. I have learned so much by your questions and reflections today, dear excellent sisters and brothers. Thank you so much. We will meet each other the second Sunday of October at 9:30 a.m. GMT. I want to thank my dear colleague and Sister Sema, who is the project coordinator of this Halaqa of Imam Ghazali. Thank you for your excellent work, dear Sister Sema. We're always honored to have you with us. Sister Sema will share all the details of the recording for this session and the previous sessions and all other details in the WhatsApp group and through email. And invite more of your colleagues, more of your family members, and even the youths. Invite them to join the Halaqa. You can do this Halaqa together with your children, for instance, dear sisters and brothers. So most welcome. I wish you all a great continuation of your morning, evening, and day. And without any further ado, let's now end the session, and we will meet each other soon again. So Rabi'ul Awal Mubarak, Rabi'ul Awal Mubarak. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give a blessed month of Rabi'ul Awal to all of you, dear brothers and sisters, and we'll see each other soon again. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.